The G7 summit in Hiroshima has been a crucial opportunity for the world leaders to show their solidarity with Ukraine and their determination to counter Russia's aggression. One of the main outcomes of the summit has been the announcement of new sanctions and export controls against Russia, targeting its exports, individuals, diamonds, and metals. The new sanctions aim to disrupt Russia's ability to get materials it needs for the battlefield, close loopholes used to evade sanctions, further reduce international reliance on Russian energy, and narrow Moscow's access to the international financial system. The U.S. has spearheaded the sanctions package, which includes extensively restricting categories of goods key to the war effort, such as dual-use items, and adding some 70 entities from Russia and third countries to the U.S. Commerce Department's blacklist. The U.S. has also imposed sanctions on some 300 individuals, entities, vessels, and aircraft involved in supporting the war, as well as expanding its sanctions authorities to more sectors of the Russian economy. The G7 as a whole has also agreed to impose new restrictions on the multi-billion-dollar export of rough diamonds from Russia, which is one of the world's largest producers of the precious stones. The initiative is intended to stop Moscow from bypassing sanctions by using India, which operates the world's largest diamond polishing industry, as a middleman. The G7 will also target Russian exports of metals, such as steel and aluminum, which are vital for its industrial and military sectors. The new sanctions and export controls are expected to have a significant impact on Russia's economy, which is already suffering from low oil prices and previous sanctions. The G7 hopes that by increasing the pressure on Moscow, it will force it to end its invasion of Ukraine and respect its sovereignty and territorial integrity. The G7 has also reaffirmed its support for Ukraine's reform efforts and pledged to provide more humanitarian and military assistance to the country. The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskiy has welcomed the new measures and thanked the G7 leaders for their strong stance against Russia. He has also expressed his hope that the new sanctions will help bring peace and stability to his country, which has been ravaged by more than 2 years of war. The challenges and opportunities for the G7 to deal with China, which is seen as a potential partner and rival, and its role in pressuring Russia to stop the war in Ukraine. China is a key player in the global landscape, with its economic clout and strategic interests often at odds with those of the G7 countries. While the G7 leaders have condemned Russia's invasion of Ukraine and imposed sanctions on Moscow, China has remained largely silent on the issue and continued to deepen its ties with Russia. This has raised concerns among some G7 members that China is not only undermining their efforts to resolve the conflict peacefully, but also posing a threat to the stability and security of the region and beyond. One of the main challenges for the G7 is how to balance their engagement with China on areas of common interest, such as trade, climate change, and pandemic response, with their pushback against China's assertive behavior on issues such as human rights, Hong Kong, Taiwan, and the South China Sea. The G7 countries have different levels of dependence and exposure to China's market and influence, which makes it difficult to adopt a unified and coherent stance on Beijing. However, there are also opportunities for the G7 to leverage their collective strength and values to deal with China more effectively. The G7 summit in Hiroshima, a city that symbolizes the horrors of nuclear war, offers a chance for the leaders to reaffirm their commitment to nuclear non-proliferation and disarmament, and to urge China to join them in pressuring Russia to de-escalate the situation in Ukraine and respect its sovereignty and territorial integrity. The G7 summit also provides an opportunity for the leaders to coordinate their policies and actions on China-related issues, such as trade, technology, infrastructure, and human rights, and to demonstrate their support for democracy, rule of law, and multilateralism in the face of China's challenge. The G7 summit is not only a meeting of leaders, but also a message to the world. By showing unity and resolve on China and Russia, the G7 can send a clear signal that they are ready and willing to defend their interests and values, as well as those of their allies and partners, in an increasingly complex and uncertain global environment.